Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving right into some truly bulletproof bioeconomic data today. We're talking about Trap-Neuter-Return, or TNR, and how targeted TNR is hands down the most fiscally responsible and effective way to stabilize community cat populations. So if you're a city planner, a shelter manager, or honestly just a taxpayer wondering where your local animal control budget is going, well, you're exactly in the right place. We're going to skip the emotional debates and look strictly at the hard numbers and the actual science of what works.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the catch and remove fallacy. Second, the science of TNR. Third, 6 shelters, massive impact. Fourth, city-by-city success stories. And finally, the financial cost benefit. So let's just jump right into it.
Section 1. The catch and remove fallacy. So to really get why municipalities all over the country are ditching their old animal control policies, we have to start by asking one big question. Why exactly does catch and remove fail? I mean, for decades, well-meaning folks in city councils just assumed that trapping and removing cats would, reduce the local population. And it sounds logical, right? You've got 15 cats in an alley, you remove them, boom, 0 cats. But why does this super intuitive idea just fail so spectacularly in the real world?
Well, it all comes down to something called the vacuum effect. This is a scientific principle that proves removing cats from a resource-rich area doesn't fix the problem. It literally just creates a reproductive vacuum. Think about it. The shelter, the hiding spots, the food sources, whether that's from a dumpster or just a really nice neighbor leaving food out, all of that is still there. You haven't removed the habitat at all. You've just emptied it out, leaving the door wide open for the next group.
And this kicks off this endless, frustrating cycle of failure. You remove the original colony, right? Then neighboring, unsterilized cats migrate right in to claim all those leftover resources. And because there's suddenly this huge surplus of food, kitten survival rates absolutely skyrocket. Their reproductive drives go into overdrive. Within less than a year, the population bounces right back to its original size, or honestly, even exceeds it. So the city just wasted thousands of tax dollars trapping, transporting, and euthanizing that first colony, only to end up exactly where they started. Wild, right?
Moving on to Section 2, the science of TNR.
Now, Trap-Neuter-Return completely flips the script on that vacuum effect. It actually uses a cat's own territorial instincts against its reproductive capacity. It's brilliant. By surgically sterilizing, vaccinating, and then returning the cat to its home turf, that cat keeps consuming local resources and actively blocks new cats from moving in. But here's the real magic. Once a colony gets TNR'd, the hormonal floor totally drops out. Within weeks, all those pesky testosterone and estrogen-driven behaviors, poof, gone. The midnight yowling, the aggressive fighting over mates, it stops. That terrible smell of intact males spraying to mark territory fades away. Roaming behaviors drop by over 70%. So they stay put, they're quiet, and they practically become invisible to the neighbors who used to complain about them.
And to make this actually work out in the field, veterinarians use what's called a mandatory ear tip. While the cat is safely asleep under anesthesia, they remove this tiny, clean little 3/8-inch piece from the top of the left ear. It's a game changer, honestly, because it lets animal control officers and local caretakers instantly spot a sterilized, vaccinated cat from a distance. No guessing, no stressful retrapping. You just see the ear tip and you know that cat is sterilized. All right, Section 3, 6 shelters, massive impact.
Okay, this is the absolute climax of our data journey today. We're looking at the high-level impact analytics of what happens when municipal shelters actually embrace targeted TNR. And we're not talking about some tiny pilot study here. This is a massive, robust sample size. We've got data from nearly 73,000 cats over 3 years, spanning 6 different U.S. community cat program shelters. Under this integrated approach, 98% of those cats were sterilized, vaccinated, and returned or adopted. And let me tell you, it completely transformed their shelter crowding. Across those 6 U.S. shelters, the median total feline intake decline was a jaw-dropping 32%. Let that sink in. That is nearly a third fewer cats physically entering the shelter system. That means fewer cages to clean, less food to buy, and less medical care required. And as a direct result of targeting the breeding source, kitten intake specifically plummeted by a median of 40%. But wait. It gets even better. The the median feline euthanasia decline absolutely plummeted by 83%. For kittens, it fell by a median of 87%. By simply stopping the reproductive cycle right at the source, these shelters drove their median live release rates up from a pretty grim 57% all the way up to 83%. I mean, this is what genuine, systemic operational relief looks like.
Let's head into Section 4, City by City Success Stories.
The evidence just keeps piling up when you hop from city to city across completely different parts of the country. Take Albuquerque, for example. By processing over 11,000 cats in a 3-year integrated program, they slashed shelter euthanasia by more than 84%. Then you have Jefferson County. They ran this huge 8-year effort, sterilized nearly 25,000 cats, and practically eradicated euthanasia with a 94.1% drop. Or San Jose, where they totally reversed their outcomes, bringing their euthanasia rate down from over 70% to just 23%. This is literally what happens when you stop the endless cycle of catch and kill and start focusing on stabilization.
But there is a really important nuance we need to talk about. What happens if you heavily target one specific zip code, a known hotspot, while mostly leaving the rest of the county alone? Well, the Alachua County study gives us a beautifully clean, quasi-experimental look at this exact scenario. Over 2 years, they ramped up TNR massively in one target area, while the rest of the county just kept doing their low-level background efforts.
And the results? Totally astonishing. The targeted TNR zip code saw a massive 95% drop in per capita euthanasia, alongside a nearly 70% drop in absolute shelter intake. Meanwhile, the non-targeted part of the county saw only a 30% decline in euthanasia. So, what's the takeaway? Surgical dose and geographic targeting matter immensely. You can't just sprinkle a few surgeries randomly around a city and hope for the best. You have to surgically target the hotspots to get these massive returns.
Finally, Section 5, the financial cost-benefit.
Okay, let's put the emotional and operational arguments aside for a second and look strictly at the fiscal reality, the bottom line for municipal budgets. The survey-backed bioeconomic literature paints a very clear picture. Looking at data from 17 different agencies, a sterilize and return action costs an average of just $58.73. On the flip side, catching and euthanizing a cat averages out to $87.31. And when you remember that removing the cat doesn't even solve the problem long-term because of that vacuum effect we talked about, the financial waste is just glaringly obvious.
This really highlights a massive prevention-to-response ratio, especially in big cities. For instance, New York City spends almost $54 million a year on shelter care. Meanwhile, the average cost for a highly effective subsidized TNR surgery there is around $121 to $125. Spending $125 up front to prevent a cat and its endless future litters from entering a shelter system that drains $54 million tax dollars annually, that is an unbelievable bargain. It should literally be a flashing neon sign for city budget planners. And the break-even math here makes this investment pretty much impossible to ignore. Even if a city is paying that higher $125 per surgery, they only need that single sterilization to prevent about technically 1.17, future removal and euthanasia cases to completely break even on the investment. Just one. And considering the exponential nature of cat reproduction, sterilizing one female prevents dozens of future kittens from ever needing shelter intake. The return on investment hits the green in just a few short years.
There's actually a pretty blunt warning in the source text I want to share. It says, if you ignore mortality, you exaggerate growth. If you ignore early maturity and survival among the few that do make it, you understate how fast hotspots can refill. Both mistakes are common, and both are bad policy math. This is a huge wake-up call for city councils. Failing to use proper bioeconomic modeling guarantees you're going to misallocate funds. You can't just count traps. You have to look at survival rates, breeding intensities, and geography. Because bad math equals bad policy, and bad policy drains the taxpayer's wallet while solving absolutely nothing. So to actually execute this successfully, municipalities have to ditch complaint-driven removal, replace it with rigorous, geographically targeted metric tracking. Look, if your city is just operating on vibes and random invoices, they aren't doing real policy. You have to track where these cats are coming from, what their outcomes are, and map it all down to the exact zip code or census tract. Keeping a tight ledger on everything from surgery to labor ensures absolute operational efficiency, allowing you to deploy resources exactly where they'll prevent the most future intakes. Based on the undeniable 80 to 95% drops in euthanasia and the massive taxpayer savings we've walked through today, the verdict is pretty much in. The bioeconomic data is bulletproof. The shelter analytics are verified. Targeted trap-neuter-return is mathematically and economically the only sound path forward. So the real question we have to ask local policymakers and shelter directors is this.
If the data is this crystal clear, what is your city waiting for? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it empowers you with the knowledge to push for data-driven, effective changes in your own communities. See you next time.